It was supposed to be the perfect family vacation. A 7-day cruise, sunshine, ocean views, and endless fun for Ava and Mason's 6-year-old twins who were full of energy and curiosity. The cruise ship, packed with families, was like a floating paradise. But on the 4th night, something strange happened. The twins were last seen wearing matching red Minnie Mouse shirts, laughing by the pool. Hours later, they were gone. No screams, no alarms, no trace. Security footage was reviewed. The entire ship was searched, and still nothing. It was like they vanished into thin air. For months, their parents begged for answers, but the cruise line offered nothing more than vague statements and apologies. Investigators hit dead ends. The case grew cold, and the twins' disappearance became another unsolved mystery lost at sea, until now. 10 months later, dusty blue suitcase washed ashore on a quiet stretch of beach hundreds of miles from the ship's last location. Inside were clothes that matched what the twins had been wearing. And something even more disturbing. A note written in childlike handwriting that read, "*, they F my upgrade." The suitcase showed signs of saltwater exposure, but the contents inside were mostly intact. What happened to Ava and Mason? Who sent the suitcase? Why now? Was it a cry for help, or something more sinister? This story isn't just about a cruise gone wrong. It's about secrets, cover-ups, and the terrifying truth that some vacations don't end when you leave the ship. The cruise ship. The Sun Serpent had a reputation for luxury and top-rated family entertainment. That's what drew the morals. Family Inn for Ava and Mason. It was a dream water slides, magic shows, endless soft-serve ice cream. Their parents, Alina and Marco, took dozens of photos during the first few days, capturing every laugh, every splash by the pool. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But then came the upgrade. On the 3rd day, the family was offered a complimentary room change. A bigger suite on a quieter floor, part of a new VIP guest program, the cruise staff said. It felt like a lucky break. They moved in that evening, and by the next morning, the twins were gone. The new suite had no signs of struggle, no forced entry, nothing disturbed. Alina swore she tucked them into bed. Marco remembered waking up to silence, which, with twins, was unusual. The cruise staff acted quickly but strangely calm, almost rehearsed. Security footage was limited. One blurry image captured the twins walking toward a staff-only hallway, but no footage showed them leaving it. As days passed and no trace was found, the ship docked and passengers moved on. The Morales family didn't. The cruise company provided little support, and authorities quickly ruled it as a possible runaway case, something the parents never believed for a second. Now, 10 months later, with the suitcase found and the strange message inside, the mystery has reopened. But instead of bringing closure, it's raising even more disturbing questions. Alina couldn't stop replaying that blurry frame of her kids heading toward the staff hallway. She knew Ava and Mason would never go off on their own, especially to an area marked crew only. Something wasn't right. She started digging into the cruise staff list from that voyage names. Faces anyone who might have interacted with the twins. But the company's records were limited, and some employees were suddenly no longer with the company. That's when she connected with Lena Harper, a former cruise line employee who'd worked below deck on the Sun Serpent. Just a year before the twins vanished, Lena wasn't surprised by the story. In fact, she said strange things had happened before missing luggage. Restricted decks that didn't match the passenger maps, and whispers about internal transfers that crew weren't supposed to ask questions about. She recalled one shift when a family reported hearing crying through the walls of their cabin. But security dismissed it as noise from another room. Lena said she'd always had a bad feeling about a particular section of the ship that was off-limits even to some crew marked as storage. but tightly guarded and sealed. As Alina and Lena compared notes, they began to notice patterns. Disappearances, complaints, and even a few blog posts from other travelers describing unsettling moments, locked doors, hushed staff, and cabin upgrades, followed by odd behavior. The deeper they looked, the more it seemed the sun serpent had something to hide, and the washed-up suitcase. It felt less like a clue and more like a warning. Alina and Lena booked a private investigator, someone who had experience working maritime cases and knew how cruise companies operated behind the scenes. His name was Roy Chandler, and he didn't waste time sugarcoating. After reviewing the security logs, Roy pointed out that several hours of footage were missing from Deck 9 the same night Ava and Mason disappeared. The cruise line claimed it was a technical error, but Roy had heard that excuse before. Lena remembered a door hidden behind a row of cleaning carts in the restricted hallway. It was never marked, and only certain staff carried access cards that worked on it. With Roy's help, they tracked down a former security guard who worked that deck. He was hesitant at first, but eventually admitted there was a rumor about an old freight area, sealed off after a fire years ago. Officially, it wasn't in use, but crew whispered it was still active in some way, especially on voyages that offered last-minute free upgrades. Meanwhile, forensic results came back from the suitcase. Sand particles inside didn't match the beach it was found on. They matched a small, isolated port the ship had visited during its 4th night at sea, a location not listed in the public itinerary. That's when the note in the suitcase started to make even more sense. My upgrade. Was it Ava who wrote it? Was it a warning about the room? Or the people who moved them there? Elena's chest tightened. If the twins were still alive, where had they been all this time? Just when Elena thought they were finally getting close, another unexpected turn shattered her hope. Roy received a call from a contact working port security at that isolated location the ship had quietly docked at. A recent cargo check flagged an unregistered cratewater, magist, locked from the outside. Inside, among empty rations and damp bedding, they found a child's drawing, sealed in plastic. 2 stick figures, holding hands with a cruise ship behind them and a large X over it. Below it, the initials A&M were scribbled in shaky writing, but what chilled Alina wasn't the drawing itself, was the fact that the paper had her handwriting on the back. A grocery list she had written during the trip, torn from her notepad and clearly repurposed. Somehow, her twins had kept that scrap all this time. That meant they weren't just taken. They were alive long enough to send messages. And someone had been moving them quietly, port to port, away from authorities, hiding them in plain sight. Then, another twist. Lena discovered that the Sun Serpent been renamed and refurbished into a new cruise ship, the Oceana Star. It had recently begun sailing again under a different cruise line with new branding but the same core structure, in one of its first destinations, the very port where the crate had been found. This wasn't just about a cruise line covering up a mistake. Someone was still using that ship, and Ava and Mason might still be on it. Alina booked herself on the next voyage of the Oceana Star, using a false name and carrying nothing but a small bag and the drawing she believed came from her children. Lena and Roy stayed behind to monitor her through a tracker and communicate updates in real time. Lena retraced every step from the previous trip: deck layouts, stairwells, the so-called upgrade rooms. On the 3rd night, she received the same offer, a complimentary room change, just like before. She accepted it without hesitation. That night, she didn't sleep. She left the lights off, pretended to rest, and waited. At 2:13 a.m., she heard movement, bare steps on the carpet. Soft but deliberate. She followed the sound down a narrow hallway, through a crew-only door left slightly open. The air was colder, the lights dim. At the end of a maintenance corridor, she found a small metal door. Her hands shook as she reached for it. Inside was a room no bigger than a supply closet. And there, huddled together on the floor, were Ava and Mason, older, thinner, but unmistakably them. The moment Ava looked up, her eyes locked on Elena's. "Mom." Before Elena could respond, a voice behind her snapped. No one was supposed to find them. She turned to see a crew member holding what looked like a tranquilizer. But suddenly, from her earpiece, Roy's voice came through. "Port authorities are boarding now. Stall him." The children were safe. But as they rushed back above deck, Elena noticed something chilling. There were 2 more rooms, just like theirs, still locked, as port authorities stormed the ship. Elena held her children close, refusing to let them out of her sight. Ava and Mason were weak, but alive, scared, confused, and clinging tightly to their mother. The authorities detained several crew members, including the one who tried to stop them. In the following days, a deeper investigation uncovered an off-the-books operation that had been moving people secretly through international waters, hidden beneath the luxury image of the cruise line. The free upgrades were part of a larger cover to isolate families and quietly separate children during late-night hours. Elena, Lena, and Roy worked closely with law enforcement to uncover more details. It turned out Ava and Mason had been moved between hidden compartments on multiple ships, disguised storage areas, and sometimes even cargo crates during port transfers.